Imagine being tied to a table, your arms stretched so far they feel like they might tear from your body, your legs pulled until your joints scream, every nerve on fire. The executioner stands calmly, tools in hand. Around you, the crowd waits, not for justice, not for mercy, but for spectacle. And yet, no death comes. Only unbearable, endless pain. Tonight, we explore history's most excruciating method of execution, a punishment so cruel it redefined terror, leaving victims wishing for death that would never come. Centuries ago, across Europe and Asia, rulers perfected methods designed not merely to kill, but to obliterate the human spirit entirely. One method became infamous, whispered across generations, its name striking fear into anyone who questioned authority. Unlike the guillotine, unlike poison, unlike hanging, this method didn't deliver a quick end. It dragged life into suffering. Every second became a nightmare, and the agony itself was the ruler's ultimate weapon. Victims were stretched. Ropes, wheels, pulleys, anything that could contort, tear, and break a body was used. Tendons snapped, joints dislocated, muscles tore, and yet somehow, the person remained conscious. Every heartbeat, every breath, became an instrument of horror. Spectators watched in awe, in fear, in fascination, while rulers demonstrated absolute control over life itself. The most notorious of these devices was the breaking wheel, also known as the Catherine wheel in some regions. It was a circular wooden frame, reinforced with iron, where limbs could be tied and pulled apart systematically. Executioners rotated the wheel while striking with hammers or iron bars, shattering bones without ending consciousness. Each crack echoed across the square. Every scream rose and fell, mingling with the murmur of the crowd. No one knew if the victim would die in minutes or hours. Accounts survive from France, Germany, and Eastern Europe. One chronicler wrote of a man accused of treason, tied to the wheel at sunrise. By midday, his arms and legs were broken, his ribs crushed. By evening, he remained alive, body twisted into shapes no human should endure. The crowd gasped with a mix of horror and awe, knowing death was inevitable but never immediate. In some cases, the victim remained on the wheel overnight, exposed to rain, wind, or scorching sun. Scavengers circled above. Birds swooped down to pick at exposed flesh. And still, they lived, trapped in their own bodies, conscious of every sound, every glance, every movement. Execution was not a sentence, it was theater, and the theater was built entirely of agony. The victim's experience was unlike anything else in human history. Every strike of the hammer or iron bar sent vibrations through the bones, rattling the entire body, making muscles spasm uncontrollably. Some executioners began their work at sunrise, pausing only briefly to rest, drink, or adjust the ropes. Victims could hear the first screams of those who went before them, cries that would echo in their minds for hours. They were conscious, aware of the approaching pain, feeling their own bodies betray them with every twist and pull. One account from 17th century France tells of a man accused of treason. Tied to the wheel in the town square, he watched as his limbs were broken in sequence, each crack audible to the horrified crowd. His hands, once strong and capable, were pulled until tendons tore. His legs twisted unnaturally. His ribs were crushed. And yet, he remained awake, his mind trapped in agony, unable to escape the reality of his punishment. Hours stretched into eternity. He whispered prayers that went unanswered, cursed the witnesses, and begged for the smallest mercy. None came. The executioners were trained not just to inflict pain, but to manage it. One misstep, one blow too strong, could end life prematurely and ruin the performance of terror. They learned to balance precision with cruelty, delivering each strike carefully, ensuring the victim survived long enough to instill maximum fear. Some executioners claimed they could predict exactly how much force a bone could take before snapping, and how long it would take for pain to reach unbearable peaks. They became experts not in killing quickly, but in torturing effectively. Spectators experienced their own form of terror. Families, children, even curious travelers witnessed the horrors unfold. Some fainted, unable to endure the screams. Others watched silently, frozen, horrified yet unable to look away. For rulers, this was exactly the point. The breaking wheel wasn't only punishment for the guilty. It was a lesson to all. Disobedience, betrayal, or dissent would be met with suffering beyond comprehension. It weaponized fear as governance, ensuring control over the living through the torment of the condemned. Survivors who endured the wheel were permanently scarred, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Those rare few who lived told stories of bones that refused to heal properly, joints that no longer worked, and nerves so damaged that even touch sent jolts of pain. Their nights were haunted by the echo of screams, their days overshadowed by the memory of agonizing anticipation. It was a punishment that never truly ended, even if death eventually came. Across kingdoms, these methods created a culture of terror. Villagers whispered of the wheel, and mere rumors could prevent uprisings. Parents used the stories to frighten children into obedience. Entire communities were molded by fear. Power was absolute, maintained not by justice, but by the knowledge that the human body itself could be weaponized against its owner. Even centuries later, historians describe it as one of the most terrifying instruments ever devised. Unlike hanging or poison, which ended life swiftly, the wheel prolonged consciousness in unimaginable agony. It turned punishment into a spectacle, pain into a demonstration of authority, and suffering into a tool of political control. The wheel was more than a punishment, it was a statement. Across Europe and parts of Asia, rulers used it not merely to eliminate enemies, but to terrify populations into obedience. In France, Germany, and Poland, public squares became theaters of suffering, where the condemned were placed on display for hours, sometimes days. Crowds gathered not to witness justice, but to witness the absolute power of the state manifested through human agony. One of the most infamous cases occurred in 18th century Germany. A man accused of murder was sentenced to the wheel. Executioners took hours to prepare him. Ropes bound his limbs, the wheel was mounted upright, and spectators crowded close, their eyes wide with anticipation and fear. Each strike of the hammer shattered bone and tendon, yet the man remained alive, conscious, screaming, writhing. It is said the crowd was silenced, unable to look directly at the unfolding horror. By the time death came, long after the sun had set, the impact of the punishment extended far beyond the man himself. Villagers carried the terror home, and stories of the execution traveled for decades. In some regions, modifications were introduced. Some victims were first beaten, then stretched, then left exposed to the elements. Others were tied in specific positions to increase suffering. Arms above the head, legs pulled apart, torso twisted unnaturally. Executioners learned to prolong consciousness as much as possible, creating a slow, methodical agony. The spectacle became a grim blend of science and cruelty. Beyond the physical torment, the psychological dimension was equally cruel. Victims knew the agony would continue. They saw others broken before them. The anticipation of each strike, the impossibility of escape, the knowledge that the crowd was watching, all combined to create suffering that could not be measured in hours or days alone. Entire communities were shaped by the fear of the wheel. Even whispers of it kept potential rebels in line. Parents told children about it, scholars wrote of it, and rulers used it to demonstrate that the human body could be turned into an instrument of law. Historically, the wheel represented the extremes of power. It transformed punishment into theater, pain into instruction, and fear into governance. It was cruelty made systematic, intentional, and public. Unlike poison or a single blow, it demanded attention. It made the condemned not just a criminal, but a symbol, an example to anyone who might think to defy authority. And yet, for all its horror, it also sparked debate. Philosophers and physicians of the time questioned its morality. Was it justice, or merely sadistic exhibition? Could a society that sanctioned such punishment claim to be civilized? These debates echoed across centuries, reminding us that cruelty, when institutionalized, can become normalized, and that fear is one of the oldest, most effective tools of control. Even centuries later, historians study the wheel not to glorify it, but to understand the dark depths of human imagination and authority. The breaking wheel, the Catherine wheel, and similar instruments were designed to inflict the ultimate terror, not simply ending life, but ensuring that life itself became an instrument of suffering. It is chilling, even now, to consider a ruler could decide that obedience was worth months or hours of agony for a single person. Entire communities were reshaped through terror. The lesson for us remains: power, when unchecked, can find unimaginably cruel forms. And history, in its unflinching documentation of such horrors, reminds us how thin the line is between authority and monstrosity. Long after the wheels had stopped turning and the hammers fell silent, the echoes of their agony lingered in towns and villages. Streets once filled with screams became silent, but the memory of terror endured. Families passed down stories of the condemned, not to celebrate justice, but as warnings. Children were told disobedience could summon horrors beyond comprehension. And the wheel, in its horrifying effectiveness, had done more than punish. It had reshaped entire societies through fear. Even the survivors, those rare few who endured the wheel or witnessed it from a distance, were haunted for life. Bones never fully healed. Joints remained stiff. Muscles twitched unpredictably. But the mind suffered even more. Dreams haunted by screams, hallucinations of twisting bodies, panic triggered by the slightest sound. The punishment extended far beyond the moment of execution. The wheel turned not only flesh, but consciousness itself, bending it to terror. Over time, the breaking wheel became a symbol, its legend outlasting its actual use. Writers, chroniclers, and moralists wrote of it as a warning, a grim example of how authority could manifest cruelty in ways unimaginable. Philosophers debated the morality of such punishment. Was justice served, or was it pure sadism? Kings and rulers used its memory to control, even when the wheel itself was no longer in use. Its purpose endured, to remind people that rebellion, defiance, or even thought could be crushed, sometimes slowly, painfully, consciously, by those in power. In modern times, museums and historical texts preserve fragments of the wheel, but nothing can replicate its terror. It remains, however, in the collective imagination, a reminder that human ingenuity, when combined with unchecked authority, can inflict unimaginable suffering. The idea that one could experience conscious agony for hours or days is almost impossible for the mind to truly grasp. And yet, history tells us it happened, over and over, leaving lessons we cannot ignore. For us today, the story is more than gruesome history. It is a meditation on power, cruelty, and fear. It is a reminder that civilization is fragile, that laws and morals are only as strong as those who enforce them. And it is a warning. The capacity for human cruelty is endless when fear becomes a tool of governance. As the last victims of the wheel were forgotten, their pain lived on in memory, in stories, and in the shadow of authority itself. The breaking wheel, in its silent testimony, continues to whisper a dark truth, that life can be weaponized, that suffering can be orchestrated, and that horror can be justified in the name of order. And so, when we look back at history, the lesson remains stark. True cruelty is not the taking of life. It is the prolonging of suffering while the world watches, helpless and complicit. The wheel, worse than death, reminds us of what humans are capable of and what it truly means to wield power without mercy.